All that you know is at an end.
Or shall we say, the beginning? Revelation chapter 19, verses 6 through 8. Before we conclude our message with a full disclosure of Jesus' G1C, we would like to first define what we mean by Jesus' year of Jubilee and his G1C are the solution to debts. The year of Jubilee is a literal event when all debts are deleted and everyone starts out debt-free. In modernized terms, this includes foreclosures, taxes, car loans, and credit card debts. It was not a figurative event, as one rich evangelist has stated. For Jesus began his ministry proclaiming the year of Jubilee. As stated in Luke chapter 4, verses 17 through 19, verse 17 states, "The scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, 'The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.'" The year of the Lord's favor is the same as the year of Jubilee. It states in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 28, "But if he does not acquire the means to repay him, what he sold will remain in the possession of the buyer until the year of Jubilee. It will be returned in the Jubilee, and he can then go back to his property." And in Leviticus chapter 27, verse 24, it says, "In the year of Jubilee, the field will revert to the person from whom he bought it, the one whose land it was." Moreover, a non-religious tax collector named Zacchaeus initiated Jesus' year of Jubilee, and he received salvation from Jesus. St. Luke chapter 19, verse 8 reads, "But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, 'Look, Lord, here now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anyone out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount.'" And verse 9 states, "Jesus said to him, 'Today salvation has come to this house, for this man too is a son of Abraham.'" Even though in Mark chapter 10, verse 21, Jesus told a rich young man to go and sell everything he had and give to the poor, he was still pleased with Zacchaeus, for Zacchaeus was courageous enough to give up only half of his possessions. The year of Jubilee doesn't have to start or doesn't have to begin as drastic as Jesus told the rich young man. If Zacchaeus had said, "Lord, I give away 1/3, or Lord, I give away 1/4, or even less of his possessions, Jesus would have still blessed him, for it was a 180-degree turn, more than what most would even dare to attempt. Jesus knew that starting out slowly with lesser amounts allows people to grasp the concept of the Jubilee and gives people a lesser risk with their possessions, especially when they don't trust others. In addition, in Acts chapter 4, verse 32, it states, "All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of his possession was his own, but they shared everything they had." Also, verses 34 and 35 reads, "There were no needy persons among them, for from time to time those who owned lands or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales, and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone as he had need." In other words, there were others like Zacchaeus the tax collector who obeyed Jesus' proclamation of his year of Jubilee. Some who heard the proclamation of the year of Jubilee for the first time immediately went even beyond Zacchaeus' 50% to 100% and realized the kingdom of heaven on earth. But that faithful and loving behavior among that first generation of true Christians lasted for only 50 to 70 years. And sadly, like Peter, who took his eyes off Jesus when walking on the water, they too turned their backs on Jesus and his year of Jubilee. Consequently, because of the fear that others would not continue to participate in Jesus' unending Jubilee, heaven has been in a recession for 2,000 years. Money had taken the upper hand ever since, and the vision of heaven on earth was lost. We relate this to what it says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7, which states, "For the secret power of lawlessness is already at work." And we relate it to what it states in 1 John chapter 2, verse 18, which states, "Dear children, this is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come. Therefore, the world has been recaptured by a system of laws which operates through, not of faith and love, but operates through the transactions of money." In regards to the rich evangelist who stated that the year of Jubilee was figurative, was the tax collector's salvation, possessions, and the money he gave also figurative? Was also the money given to the apostles by those who sold their homes figurative? Are Jesus' words non-binding? Maybe the rich evangelist has deep pockets, and the year of Jubilee is not convenient for him. Or does he just lack trust in others? The difference between the Jewish Jubilee and Jesus' Jubilee is that the Jewish Jubilee was to be obeyed every 50 years. But on Mount Zion, as symbolized in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 22, and better known as the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus fulfilled all the Old Testament laws, including the Jewish Jubilee, by spiritualizing them, radicalizing them, and maximizing them. For example, Jesus states in Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 and 22, "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'Do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment.' But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment." Verse 27 and 28 states, "You have heard that it was said, 'Do not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Verse 38 and 39, "You have heard that it was said, 'Eye for an eye and tooth for tooth.' But I tell you, do not resist an evil person." Verse 43 and 44 says, "You have heard that it was said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Jesus' vetoing statements, "But I tell you," does not mean that Jesus came to invalidate the true spirit and real intent of the Old Testament laws, but he came to reveal its ultimate purpose and deepest meaning. Thus, the law against murder means that we should harbor no anger, resentment, or grudges. The law against adultery means that the very thought of evil is forbidden. The law about loving the neighbor is extended to include our enemies. Also in the Old Testament, the law of Moses commanded Israel to rejoice before the Lord for 7 days a year at the Feast of Tabernacles. But the law of Christ says, "Rejoice in the Lord always," not just 7 days. This is in Philemon chapter 4, verse 4. If we apply the Feast of Tabernacles to the Sermon on the Mount, we can rightly imagine Jesus saying, "You have heard that it was said, 'You must rejoice for 7 days at the feast.' But I say unto you, you must never cease to rejoice." Likewise, we have correctly applied the Jewish year of Jubilee to Jesus' maximizing Sermon on the Mount, and therefore we are correct to imagine Jesus as saying, "In the law of Moses, the Jewish law of Jubilee is for 50 years, but I tell you, I proclaim an unending Jubilee." In addition, the Old Testament's two greatest commandments, to love God with all one's heart, soul, and mind, found in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5, and the commandment to love one's neighbor as oneself, found in Leviticus 19, verse 18, are maximized by Jesus' command to love each other as he loved us. This is found in St. John 13:34. Therefore, when Jesus stated that he did not come to destroy the Old Testament laws, but to fulfill them, he rounded up all the Old Testament laws and transformed them into their ultimate meaning. We thus arrive at Jesus' year of Jubilee and his G1C for greatest one command. Furthermore, for those who still find this hard to accept, let us simplify the direction Jesus wants us to head into, so it can be understood that it is much easier to participate than what it sounds like when one first hears the call to sacrifice for one's community. Here's a segment from one of our documents, number 7. Many, in anticipation of the end of the world, came to John the Baptist and asked, "What should we do?" John answered back, "The man with 2 tunics should share with him who has none, and the one who has food should do the same." To the tax collectors he said, Don't collect more than you are required to. And to the soldiers he said, do not extort money and do not accuse falsely. This is in Luke chapter 3, verses 10 through 15. Thus, what then would a modern John the Baptist say on the same issue if it were in the year 2007? Beyond the fact that we should believe in Jesus and his greatest one command, as stated in 1 John chapter 3, verse 23, we believe he would say, on an individual level, everyone should deny oneself and seek the well-being of the community. To those who have personalized services and small retails, he would say, give discounts more often. And to the bigger services and merchants, he would say, start lowering your prices, whether it's gas prices, house rentals, or even the price of milk. Remember what Spirit Airlines in Florida did on September 11, 2002, when everyone flew for free, and it gave a new meaning to being free-spirited. Still to others, he would also say, get involved with your nearest town meeting and voice yourself on how to make your community a healthier place to work and live. Furthermore, like the original John the Baptist, we too are not so much for giving money to organizations to help people, even though it is important, and we will still do it. But with money being the main medium for action, it tends to become a way for people to buy their way into the kingdom of heaven. Also, Jesus said, you cannot serve both God and money. This is in Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. Money won't allow the kingdom to fully materialize on earth in the way God the Father and Jesus wants. The poor widow who gave from her heart gave more than the rich who gave from their pockets. This is in Mark chapter 12, verses 41 through 44. So, we would rather have people give of themselves by actually getting their hands and feet dirty through participating one-on-one with others, which is what heaven will end up being anyway. The segment you just heard is from our document number 7. But unfortunately, if one is comfortable with their money and their religion, this message may not suit them. But many are losing their homes and are going hungry globally, and it is time to do something about it. Revelation chapter 18 is now being fulfilled. Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. All the institutions which use the Old Testament as a guide for instruction, like Judaism, Islam, and contemporary Christianity, have been revealed for their bad leadership, bad advices, and their lack of love. All the attempts by mankind to establish his pursuit of happiness by his standards are collapsing. The tide has turned because, like the kingdom of heaven, money, the world's god, is turning its back and is now going into its recession. Therefore, in view of our present global crises, it is a good time to initiate Jesus' year of Jubilee and disclose his G1C, for we believe the world needs to hear what Zacchaeus and the first Christians heard from Jesus. Ironically, like in the movie which has its initials as GC for Golden Compass, we pray that like in the movie, the world will accept Jesus' Golden Compass, his greatest G1C for greatest one command, and use it to point people in the right direction.